Okay, let's talk about something that sounds like it's straight out of a horror movie. The brain-eating amoeba. Seriously. But this isn't fiction. Behind that terrifying name is a real and actually fascinatingly complex microscopic organism. So, let's demystify the science behind Naegleria fowleri.
I want to start with a number that just immediately sets the stakes. 97%. Get this, that is the case fatality rate for the infection caused by this amoeba. It's one of the absolute deadliest infections known to science, which is exactly why understanding it is so incredibly important.
So a number like that just forces you to ask, right? We've all heard that scary nickname, but what is this thing really? How does it live its life? And what on earth flips that switch, turning it from just a free-living microbe into a killer?
So first up, let's meet the culprit itself. This section is all about identifying Naegleria fowleri and the really devastating disease it causes. It's a condition called Primary Amebic Meningoencephalitis, or you'll hear it called PAM for short.
Okay, so here's the crucial thing you have to understand. Naegleria fowleri isn't out there hunting for us, not at all. It's a thermophile, which just means it loves heat, and it's perfectly happy just living its life in warm lakes and rivers, munching on bacteria. It only becomes a parasite completely by accident. It's pure opportunism when it just happens to find its way inside a human. Our history with this amoeba is actually pretty short. It was only formally identified down in Australia back in '65. But what's really amazing here is the success story. Once they linked outbreaks to unchlorinated water, Australia put chlorination in place. And get this, they haven't had a single case in that region since 1981. That's a real public health victory. But look at that last point. A warming planet is now literally redrawing the map for this thing, pushing this heat-loving amoeba into places it's never been before.
All right, so to really get how Naegleria fowleri is so successful, you've got to look at its incredible biology. This thing is a master of transformation, a shapeshifter. It has 3 totally distinct forms that let it survive, thrive, and ultimately infect.
And this table just lays out its genius adaptability perfectly. So it can exist as this tough, dormant cyst to wait out cold or dry spells. Then, when conditions get better, it transforms into the Trophozoite. Now this is the one to watch. It's the feeding, reproducing, and crucially, the only infectious stage. But if food runs out, it can morph again into a sleek, 2-tailed flagellate just to swim away and find a better neighborhood. Pretty clever, right?
All right, now for the part everybody wants to know. How does it actually get into the brain? Well, the amoeba doesn't just randomly tunnel its way in. Nope, it follows a very specific pre-existing route. It basically hijacks a biological superhighway to get right where it wants to go. So the whole terrible journey begins when water containing that infectious trophozoite stage gets forced way up high into the nose. From there, it latches onto the olfactory nerves. Yep, the nerves for your sense of smell. It then literally crawls along these nerve fibers, squeezes through this sieve-like bone plate at the top of your nose, and just walks right into the front of your brain.
And this, right here, is where that brain-eating name comes from. It's not just a scary nickname, it's literal. The amoeba's main weapon is a process called trogocytosis, which basically means cellular nibbling. It extends this little structure called a food cup and physically bites off and swallows pieces of your brain cells. It is, quite literally, eating the brain, piece by piece.
But it doesn't stop with just the physical eating. Oh no, the amoeba also wages full-on chemical warfare. It releases this whole cocktail of destructive molecules. Things called Naegleria spores act like little hole punchers, making cells just burst open. Proteases dissolve the very scaffolding that holds your tissues together. And other enzymes go after the protective coating on your nerve cells. It's just a devastating, multi-front attack.
As you can imagine, this all-out assault leads to an incredibly urgent medical crisis. The progression of the disease, PAM, is just shockingly fast. It creates this desperate race against time for patients and for their doctors.
And this timeline is just terrifying. After just a few days of incubation, the first symptoms pop up. Headache, fever, nausea, which, could be anything. It's so easily mistaken for something like bacterial meningitis. But then, within just 2 more days, the severe neurological symptoms hit, and death from massive brain swelling often happens within 10 days of that very first symptom. The window to do anything is just incredibly, tragically small.
And this chart just says it all. This is the outcome of that race against time. Since 1962 in the US, there have been 167 cases. And out of all of those, there have been only 5 known survivors. 5. The odds are just astronomically stacked against you.
But those 5 survivors, they give us this one crucial piece of information. And this quote really frames the challenge perfectly. The disease isn't a guaranteed death sentence. Survival is possible, but it hinges on an immediate and aggressive and highly specific course of action.
So the big question, how did those 5 people make it? Well, their treatment rested on these 4 critical pillars. First, an unbelievably early diagnosis. Second, a super aggressive multi-drug cocktail to fight the amoeba. Third, literally cooling the body down to reduce that brain swelling. And finally, physically managing the immense pressure inside the skull. It just goes to show you have to throw everything you have at this infection all at once if there's any hope.
And that all brings us to our final and honestly our most important section, prevention. Because understanding this amoeba isn't just some academic exercise, right? It's about empowering ourselves with the knowledge to stay safe when we're in and around water.
So, the single most important thing is just knowing where the risk is. This breaks it down really simply. The amoeba loves warm, still, fresh water. So think shallow lakes in the middle of summer. But it absolutely cannot survive in salt water or in a properly chlorinated swimming pool. Just knowing that difference is your best first line of defense.
The CDC's advice is really straightforward. Anytime you're in a warm, freshwater lake or river, just assume the amoeba is there and act like it. The single best thing you can do is stop water from getting forced high up your nose. So wear nose clips, hold your nose when you jump in, and try not to kick up all the mud and sediment from the bottom, because that's where it likes to hang out.
Okay, and this is a really critical point for anyone who uses a neti pot or other kinds of sinus rinses. You should never use untreated water straight from the tap. The risk is really, really low, but it's not zero. To be completely safe, you have to boil the water for 1 full minute and then let it cool down, or use a certified filter. It's a super simple step that completely eliminates the risk.
And all of this leaves us with one last, really important question. We know Naegleria fowleri loves heat. So as our planet gets warmer and our lakes and rivers heat up, this once rare monster is already expanding its territory northward. It seems the battle to understand, to treat, and most importantly, to prevent this devastating infection is only going to become more urgent. Thanks for tuning in.